Welcome to another edition of Immigration Nation. My name is Nicole Whitaker. I'm an immigration lawyer based in Maryland. We're here today with our Senior Paralegal and Legal Operations Manager, Alejandra Beteta. Um, Together with the rest of our team, we represent people in immigration cases all over the country. We help people with family-based cases and humanitarian-based cases like asylum, U visa, T visa, and VAWA. We help people get work permits, green cards, and U.S. citizenship. If you'd like to schedule a consultation with our team, you can give us a call at 410 207 9272 to schedule your consultation. Alejandra and I are both members of the consultation team, so you can choose to schedule with either her or I. Welcome, Alejandra.
Thank you for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited.
Today, Alejandra is going to tell us a little bit about herself, her education. She's going to share why she wanted to work with immigration, and she's going to share a little bit about some of the interesting cases that she has worked on through her work with Whitaker Legal over the years. So, Alejandra, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Um, well, as you mentioned, I am currently the Legal Operations Manager and Senior Paralegal here at Whitaker Legal. I have been with the team for about 7 years now, since around 2016. I joined the team as a legal assistant right after I graduated college from Towson University, and I've been on the team ever since. I've been part of this wonderful, wonderful process. I've been able to help so many people, and now as senior paralegal and legal operations manager, I am part of the team that's getting to train our team so that we can all offer the best service possible to all of our clients.
Yeah. What made you decide to get into immigration law specifically?
Well, I am an immigrant myself. My family and I immigrated from Peru when I was about 12 years old. I have four younger siblings, and back then my parents made this huge decision to move all five of us to the US without having any ties or connections or family here in America. As the oldest one of my five siblings, I got to witness how difficult that journey was for my parents. I certainly experienced difficulties as part of the journey myself. And once I was able to get through school and get through higher education, I knew that what I wanted to do was to put my knowledge, my abilities into helping the community that I am a part of, this immigrant community that is so particular to the United States. Nowhere else in the world, definitely not the countries that the country that I come from, or the countries that all other immigrants come from, do we see this such a diverse group of people that have this shared experience of having left home and being in a place that's completely different. So I knew that I wanted to focus my efforts into that, into their journey, into being able to help them through it. And to have the opportunity to do that here is all I could have ever asked for.
Yeah, that's definitely something we put a lot of emphasis on when we are training new people on our team, to have that understanding and compassion for where our clients are. Although we have hundreds of cases that we're working on for our clients, this is possibly one of the most important things going on in their life, and they've sacrificed a lot many times to come to the US, to have hired us, and they deserve our best work. They deserve our attention and the best service that we can offer.
Absolutely.
So what kinds of cases do you work on here at Whitaker Legal, Alejandra?
So currently I get to work on a lot of cases for SITch, which is and SITch means Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. So these are the cases in which we get to help children who are under the age of 21 here in the state of Maryland. These kids are here in America with either one of their parents or without both of their parents. These kids have been neglected, abandoned, or abused by one or both of their parents. And so having these particular circumstances allow them to be eligible for this program, in which they can be eligible for SITch status, and eventually they will have the ability to apply for their green card or their permanent residence. I also work with cases for people who have been victims of human trafficking. This is what we call a T visa. These cases are really, really interesting because most of the time, the clients that are coming to us with these T visa cases, they themselves don't know or have the ability to recognize that they have been a victim of something that could constitute human trafficking. And so when we think of human trafficking, I think that a lot of us outside of this field maybe think of like moving a person from one place to another for the purposes of like sex trafficking, or some children get trafficked also. But when with the clients that I have dealt with, and a lot of the clients that I've dealt with have experienced human trafficking in the sense of workplace mistreatment. So sometimes when a person is not treated fairly at their job, and they experience difficulties or problems with an employer, that can constitute a form of human trafficking. And so it is really super interesting to be able to have those conversations with clients in which they have been told no before. They have seen other immigration lawyers that have not maybe not asked the right questions, or they haven't been interviewed for that specific type of case, and to be able to tell them that, oh, this little thing may help you qualify, is really interesting. And definitely I've had the opportunity to have cases like that. It's really exciting to be able to help people that thought that they didn't have a way in.
Yeah. So tell us more about the Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. So, SIJ, or Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, sometimes in Spanish we call it the Visa Juvenil, is for children under 21 in the United States who've been neglected, abandoned, or abused by one or both parents. A lot of times they're living in the US either alone, or they're living in the US with an older brother or sister, an aunt or uncle, or one of the parents where they were abandoned by the second parent. Sometimes it's the child under 21 coming to us looking for representation if they're a teenager or an older young adult. But a lot of times it's the parent, the guardian, the older brother or sister who is coming to us for help. A lot of times because that child is in removal proceedings in immigration court, or just because they know that that child is undocumented and might have this option through SIJ. Tell me about one of the SIJ cases that you've worked on that has been interesting in your practice.
Sure. So SITch cases are very near and dear to my heart. I have certainly a soft spot for kids that come here and they want to do better for themselves. I see a lot of myself, a lot of my siblings in that story a lot of the time. And so to be able to work in these cases is really a blessing. One case that particularly stands out to me, because we had the opportunity to help this kid who I don't think he would have had any other way to get status had we not been able to do this. So this minor came to us maybe a month before he turned 21. And he had hired an attorney to represent him in SITch, or the Visa Juvenil, before hiring us. And this attorney had dropped the ball a little bit. And they had not completed the part of the case that has to happen before the child turns 21. So with a month or less than a month left before that deadline, our team got right on the job, and we had to communicate with agencies in his home country of Honduras to get paperwork signed almost immediately. And so for those of you who don't know, communicating with a signing agency or a delivery agency in Honduras is a little bit more difficult than going to FedEx here in the US. We had to make contact with somebody in the city who would then walk or travel to the small town where a client was from, try to locate this person organically. No text messaging, no email, no fax. Everything was done in person. We were able to finally find this person that needed to sign a document in record time. And then once we had that signature, we were able to, or we started the work of convincing the court here in Maryland, the circuit court, to let us file this case as soon as possible. Courts and judges have their own schedules, their own wait times. Usually a lot of protocol goes into that and things take time. But we really, really were committed to this job and to this case. And we spent, I think, hours on the phone trying to get them to put us on the schedule, And at the end, we were able to have a hearing and a decision like 2 days before this child turned 21. We were able to submit the forms to USCIS like the day before his birthday,
overnighting them,
and his petition was in there before the deadline, and for that reason he was able to move on with his case. I believe that right now this child has already gone through his processing time and he has received his work permit and is waiting on his green card. So just that small little impact that seemed like a big deal for us in that moment. We were all about that case. But that small blip in our lives has changed his life. He's going to be able to build a life for himself, a future for himself, a life for his future family, his kids, and that is priceless.
Yeah. My favorite part of this case, it wasn't my favorite part at the time, but we didn't realize how difficult it would be to get the one parent signature in Honduras. They lived in a really remote part of the El Campo, remote part of like in the mountains. And that company that we hired, the courier service to serve that person and get the signature, had to travel by horseback over the mountains to locate her in this rural town because they don't have any regular kind of mail system. So once we overcame that hurdle, then we had the hurdle with the court to try to get that court date as soon as possible. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen for that client.
Yeah, and fun fact, that client has recently hired us to do the same thing for his younger brother. So now we'll be able to help them as well.
Yeah, excellent. What about the T visa? The T visa, as you mentioned, the T visa is a way that we get work permits and green cards for people in the U.S. who have been mistreated at work, who've been taken advantage of by an employer. I know we've had clients from all walks of life who have been eligible for a T visa from different ways. So we've had people who were trafficked when they were smuggled into the U.S. by the coyotes. They were forced to work for the coyotes, either cooking or cleaning. If they were forced to prepare or transport drugs or backpacks or anything else. We've had people who were mistreated and trafficked working in housekeeping, for restaurants, working in agricultural industries, landscaping, construction, even a church. In fact, one of our recent T visa approvals was for a family who they came to the U.S. based on these false promises of a church. But tell me about some of your favorite stories from our T visa cases, Alejandra.
So yeah, just like you mentioned, and I like I had said a minute ago, T visa can look a couple of different ways. And when we think of T visa or when we think of human trafficking, I think we mostly refer to that image of somebody being moved from one place to the other for forced labor or sex trafficking. And we definitely have cases of that nature, but there are also cases in which human trafficking can constitute workplace mistreatment. And these are people that are not receiving what was promised at jobs, or they're being mistreated by managers or bosses and treated in a specific way because of their immigration status or any other excuse that this person could have. to reference a case that is more of that that I guess usual image of human trafficking. We had a client who, like tons of other people, decided to start this journey and to come to the U.S. And she hired a group of what they're called coyotes or guides. These people who help or guide travelers across the border. They charge a lot of money for these services, but they just because they charge a lot of money doesn't mean that they can guarantee a secure passage or a safe journey for these people, especially for women who travel across the border. Oftentimes, when we speak to female clients about their journeys, we hear that they see large amount of violent acts against them, against other female travelers throughout their journey. And this is exactly what happened to this client of ours. She had a very, very difficult journey here in which she experienced sexual abuse and violence. She witnessed some awful things that happened to other travelers, and eventually she made it to the United States. She turned herself into immigration services, and she thought that she was, for the most part, free from these coyotes, from these guides. And so what happens is that travelers will go into ICE detention, and they will be processed, and then they will be released and sent where they're going. What a lot of people don't know is that a lot of times the coyotes or the guides will be waiting for those travelers after they have been released from detention, and so they kind of get recaptured by these coyotes and put into situations of forced labor or sex trafficking once they're inside of the United States. So that is exactly what happened to our client. She was released from detention, and right outside of detention, she was recaptured by her coyote, and the coyote brought her here to Timonium, Maryland, where she was. She then became part or victim of this system of sex trafficking. These coyotes had a business, for lack of a better word, in which they were capturing women and forcing them to become sex workers here in Maryland. And she was one of those people. Eventually, after months of being in this system, she was able to escape with the help of a person off the street. And a couple of weeks after she escaped, she came to see us to ask if she had any kind of option, not knowing, not even thinking about the fact that this one thing that happened to her would be the part of her case that would qualify her for immigration benefits. For that particular case, we reported everything that happened to law enforcement, and they actually responded, which, although it's not necessary for any case, it is always a plus when they do respond. And in her particular case, law enforcement became involved. They started an investigation. We had the opportunity to participate in the investigation and help law enforcement to pinpoint where these events happened, where that system of human trafficking was happening here in Timonium, Maryland. And eventually, our client's case was approved with, our hard work, her declaration, the intervention from law enforcement. All of that came together to allow her case to be approved. And now she has her T visa for herself and for her daughter. Right now she has a work permit, and she has already started her application for adjustment of status, which, as I mentioned before, for the previous case that I was talking about, it is life-changing. She's going to be able to build on that status, on the solidity of that status for herself, for her daughter. Her daughter is going to be able to start working on her journey and her future, so that when she has kids, those kids are going to be set. And that is priceless. There's nothing like that, and we get to participate in those things every day.
Yeah. He was super brave. Once we uncovered that this had been the situation, and explained the process of the TV. So one of the requirements is that the trafficking have been reported to law enforcement. And as you said, we local law enforcement got involved. Sometimes Homeland Security investigations gets involved. Sometimes the FBI gets involved. Sometimes it's the local Department of Labor or local law enforcement. And in this case, I think that because of the sexual assault involved, local law enforcement picked it up. And sometimes law enforcement chooses to interview our clients over the phone. Sometimes they've come to our office to interview. In this case, they asked that she go to the police barracks in Timonium. And so I went with her there and I served as a translator in the interview. And that was super brave of her to be willing to go to the police station, being an undocumented immigrant in the US. But I think it was really important for her that she provide this information to law enforcement. These coyotes are often members of gangs or cartels, um, these international criminal organizations. And I know that she was hopeful that even if there was no arrest or conviction in her case, that hopefully law enforcement is collecting all of the information about these cases with the plan to ultimately take down some of these people in our neighborhoods. And after our interview with law enforcement at the police barracks, they asked if she remembered her address where she was held in Timonium, and she didn't. And so they asked if she would be willing to do a ride along with them to show them where the apartment was, so they could try to trace back what's the address and who rented that apartment in the past. So she was super brave to do the interview, to do the ride along, and ultimately law enforcement got all the information from her case, and hopefully it'll result in some good in the future.
Yeah, it's a really important thing to mention, Nicole, that although we do report these things to law enforcement, that and for us that's a good thing. Certainly a lot of our clients experience that apprehension at reporting the things that happen to them to police. And if anyone is watching and they're thinking, oh, I might have a case that sounds like this, and I'm not sure if I want to go as far as reporting it to law enforcement, they should know that these reports, although they do happen for these types of cases, they are completely anonymous. The client is not going to, their information is not going to be put out there. So they're not going to be in that danger, and they should be encouraged to report these things or to come to their lawyer and say, hey, this happened, and so that we can help.
Yeah, and we always talk to clients about what their goals are with reporting, and counsel them on the options and what the effects of reporting might be. And different law enforcement agencies have different policies, and we can walk them through
Exactly.
all the potential outcomes of reporting.
Okay.
Tell me about another TV sick case of yours.
Okay, so this one is a little bit more of a unconventional type of TV set, which is what we're talking about, where TV set or human trafficking can take on the form of workplace mistreatment. We had a client who had a job cleaning houses for a woman and she hired all of these undocumented immigrants for this house cleaning business. But this woman happened to be physically abusive at times with her employees. She was in charge of picking up the women that would clean the houses from their homes, taking them to the work site or to the cleaning site, and then taking them from site to site, and then eventually taking them home. She was also she had the habit of yelling, pushing, throwing things at them, and any type of complaint from the people or the employees was met with, well, how can you complain? You're an undocumented immigrant. You have no other options. Where else are you going to work? If I don't hire you, who's going to hire you? And if you do leave, then I'm going to report you to immigration. Um, our client specifically had a problem with this employer in which, because the employer was in charge of taking her to and from work, the employer was like, it was up to the employer when our client could stop working. She'd pick her up early in the morning, and our client would have a schedule that she had to adhere to because she had another job after finishing the house cleanings, and she never knew when she was going to come home because this employer would not drive her home when she was supposed to get home. And eventually it seemed that was the employer's goal, was to make it so that our client was late to her other job so that she'd get fired and she'd have no other options but to stay in her employment. For that particular client, we were able to gather her declaration, statements of everything that happened just from her. It was the client and our team that worked on this declaration. We crafted it. We put all the details in there. We submitted her application. And we were able to get her T visa approved based on those facts. That client now she has the approved T visa, she has her work permit, and she's on her way to getting her green card for herself and for her husband, who will be a derivative of her case.
Yeah. I think the same family where her younger brother and her partner's younger sister came to the US at the same time, and so we helped both of their younger siblings get legal status through the Special Immigrant Juvenile Program. That's a whole family we got to help through 3 different
Yes.
cases, but
Yeah.
an exciting, good outcome in the end. Well, thank you for sharing, Alejandra. If you've been listening to this edition of Immigration Nation and you think you might be eligible for the Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, or you're taking care of a child who might be eligible, or you think you might be eligible for a T visa because you've worked for an employer who mistreated you, took advantage of you, threatened to report you to immigration, give us a call at 410-207-9272 to schedule your consultation. We represent clients all over the country. Although we're based in Maryland, we can represent clients in all 50 states, and we have clients all over. We have clients in Texas, California, Alaska, Florida, New York, Colorado, so many different places. So again, if you schedule a consultation, you have options to meet with me, Alejandra, and our other 2 attorneys, attorney Inés Merced and Adriana Jimenez. So thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of Immigration Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.